what I discover is churches often love to tell their people, this is such a generous church. And when I show them statistics, they learn, oh, we're not as generous as I thought we were. But they think
Hmm.
they're generous because they say, we want to support 200 kids by Compassion International. And by the end of the Sunday, they're out of names. Oh, this is such a generous church. No, their church is amazing at needs-based giving. Great. That's great. Well, where are we not good at as a church? And how can we press into that? That's what I think this framework can help a church realize we think we're generous, but maybe we're good at a certain aspect. And then my goal is to help them grow in other aspects of these various ways to give.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Leading Smart podcast. I have a massive smile on my face. So if you're just listening to this, head on over to YouTube where we post the video. Because, I mean, first of all, I think I have a great smile, right,
You
guys?
do.
Yes,
Thanks.
Not
absolutely.
arguing with that.
But second of all, I am so excited about this conversation because Tim and David have just become such dear friends over the last. How long have we known each other? I mean, Tim and I have known each other for like a decade now. And David, I guess we're probably like
Almost, yeah, 9 years. 9 years.
that's crazy. And we all wear multiple hats. So we all have part one of our hats is the leading smart hat. And then David, you also spend a lot of your time doing generosity consulting with Generosity OS. And so, this season is all about leading in real time. And one of the major pain points that we talk to church leaders or hear from church leaders about a lot is generosity and giving. And so we've invited our friend David Whiting to join us today. So, Tim, you and David go way back to what I like to say when you had hair, but it was,
Oh,
Oh,
even way, way, way before then.
almost to before I actually had hair the first time. 1972 is when David and I
Yes.
met.
okay.
And if you're doing the math, that's like 53 years ago.
So cool.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's we met when my family moved to Iowa. We were coming from Chicago at that point. Yeah, coming from Chicago. We grew up in Kansas and then 1 year in Chicago and then moved to Iowa. And the Whiting family was one of the first families I met.
That's so fun. Did y'all live
Interestingly
like on the
enough,
same street?
no.
No, we went to the same church, and then the first year I was in a public school, but after that we went to the same private school as well. That was part of the church.
By the
That's
way, I
awesome.
was talking to my mom this morning, Tim, and she's was talking about sometime in the next few days she's going to visit your mom and they're going to play games. She and another
They
Oh
friend.
my
So they're still friends to this day and they're in their 80s.
they hang out. That's right.
That is so cute. Oh, that's so y'all are gonna be doing that when you're in your 80s. Tim and David are gonna be meeting up to play
I don't know
games.
if
I don't know
either
how
of us will
you're
make it to our 80s, but that's very optimistic of you.
that's so funny. Okay, well, so David, well, and also I wanted to give another piece of information that all of us worked together at Vanderbloemen for, let's see, I was there for 9 years. Tim, you were there for 6 years. David, you were there for
Three,
three. I
little
always
over
say
three.
four.
Yep.
It was 3 years. Okay, so, during that time, all of us got to see the Big C church across the country, but even the globe of patterns and trends and challenges and opportunities. And now we get to do that together again with Leading Smart and Generosity OS. And we're so grateful for Generosity OS. They're one of our Leading Smart partners, help us do things like our podcasts and our gatherings that we get to do. So, David, could you kind of walk us through what does it look like to be a church consultant with Generosity OS? You've been doing this really fun thing this week on your Instagram where you've been posting, a day in the life of a church consultant, which I've loved seeing, by the way. Great job.
Oh,
But
that
kind
was fun.
of give us a shape of like how you spend your day and what that looks like. And then I'm going to ask a few questions about a framework around generosity that you have.
Yeah, sure. I really work with two companies. I do Leading Smart with the consulting that's involved with Leading Smart, whether it's helping a leadership team change their structure or succession work, whatever might be involved there, coaching a pastor. But then I also do Generosity OS. So my I spend a lot of time. with a church side by side and on site, but then also a lot of time just talking to pastors via Zoom. When it comes to generosity, it's really about helping what does it look like to build a culture of generosity that's not primarily transactional, but is discipleship oriented, is life transformational that results in generosity. And so, yeah, I do that a lot, and a lot of them are, most of mine are like year-long engagements, but some of them are very brief. I got a call from actually someone I had met through Leading Smart at an event, and they called me 2 weeks ago and said, we get 800,000 our end of year offerings. We need to triple that. Will you help us? And so I've been to their church twice now in the last week and a half as they're planning to, how do we do that in a discipleship encouraging oriented way that doesn't hurt our giving in 2026. So just whatever a church needs, but it's really about helping them with their culture of generosity and helping people think differently through discipleship.
Yeah.
Can I
That's one of the things oh yeah, go ahead,
I was
Tim.
just going to
Sorry.
say what I love about what I think makes Generosity OS stand out in their field is usually, 30, 40 years in ministry now is like, usually you think about it. I think about a stewardship company as like, hey, we need to build a building. We need to call someone in to help us. And these guys really take it from the standpoint, like David just said, I don't want to repeat it, but just standpoint of discipleship and how do we increase discipleship around generosity and increase overall generosity in our church. Yes, sometimes that's going to be a capital campaign, but a lot of times it's not. It's like you're helping this church you just mentioned. That's great.
Yesterday,
It's
yesterday I was talking to a lead pastor for about an hour, and he's getting ready to enter into a 3 week series on generosity and giving. And he just was asking me a ton of questions. How would you handle this? How would you talk about this? And it's a church down in California that I've been working with now for, I don't know, 6 months or so, and just yeah, just really enjoyed that. So I feel like a normal week is never a normal week, which is hard for me because I'm such a routine guy. When I was pastoring, I knew exactly what I'd be doing at this time of day, every week. So, but I'm really enjoying it. It's thrilling to be able to walk alongside churches and pastors as they see unique things happen in the realm of generosity.
That's awesome. Well, David, you and I were on a call with a church a few months ago, and you started going through this framework of different levels of generosity in a church. And I was sitting there thinking, this is amazing. I've never heard this before. It simplifies the challenges that so many churches face and can't figure out why. And so we get off the phone, and I think I like sent you a voice memo or I called you, and I was like, David, that was the first time I've heard that. Like, where is that? You've got to write about it. We've got to share it with the world because it was so good. And you were like, really? I just made that up.
I remember
And
that.
so, yeah. And so you've since now I've heard you do a couple of talks on it, and which I'm so happy to see because that's what we're going to talk through today because it is so, I think it's so powerful to just help put structure to the different pain points or organizational growth patterns that churches run into as they grow, where giving isn't working as well as it used to, or generosity isn't growing as much as it was at one time. So talk to us big picture about this framework. What
Yeah.
does it look like? And then we can kind of go through each one at a time.
Yeah, I remember that phone call because I just been observing this, and then as we were um, talking to that pastor, just a wonderful, wonderful church, wonderful leader. It kind of just based on the way the patterns they were seeing, I just started dividing it in my mind a little bit. But your encouragement has made me organize it better. So, Holly, you're doing what you are very good at doing, helping people create a system to make it even better. So yeah,
Oh.
I look at 6 levels. So should I just name one and we'll go at a time, or should I name all six and then talk about them? What would you prefer?
Let's do high level all six, and then we
Okay.
can kind of walk through them one by one. And because I want to hear Tim, after he does the high level, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Tim, on if you agree or disagree with
Oh, I'm
David.
going to poke holes in it. I'm going to tear it apart. Go ahead, David.
Here we
Yes.
go. Let's go.
All right.
Um, so I would say giving 101 is like duty-based giving. I give because it's the right thing to do. Giving 201 is worship-based giving, that I give as an act of worship and surrender. 301 is needs-based giving. Um, that project is a good one. I want to give to it. 401 is like mission-based giving. I give because I want to advance the mission of my church. 501 is disciple-based giving. I give because it shapes me. It deepens my faith. Giving causes me to grow. And then level 6 is legacy-based or kingdom-based givers. I give sacrificially because generosity is part of my life calling. So those would be the 6.
So what do you think, Tim?
Love that. What I love is it just gives handles. What the other thing I love about it is it like gives like we all can grow in our generosity and our giving, right? So it gives like, oh, I'm at level 3 or I'm at level 2 or whatever, and it's like like all of us can take a step, even if
And
Mm.
what's
even if
interesting
we're
is,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I say even if we feel like we're stretched in our generosity more than we've ever been in our life, it's like like all things in our spiritual life, you don't land there, you don't stay there, you take a next step. So yeah, go ahead, dude.
What I've discovered is that churches, when I go over this, they say, oh, here's the 2 we're good at. So a church will say, um, they'll see this and I'll walk through it and they'll say, what I discover is churches often love to tell their people, this is such a generous church. And when I show them statistics, they learn, oh, we're not as generous as I thought we were. But they
Mhm.
think they're generous because they say, we want to support 200 kids by Compassion International. And by the end of the Sunday, they're out of names. Oh, this is such a generous church. No, their church is amazing at needs-based giving. Great. That's great. Well, where are we not good at as a church? And how can we press into that? That's what I think this framework can help a church realize we think we're generous, but maybe we're good at a certain aspect. And then my goal is to help them grow in other aspects of these various ways to give.
Yeah, and that's what I like about well, I mean, that's what I love about any framework. You guys know me, I'm like such a frameworks
Chunky.
nerd because it helps objectify it rather than personalize it in a bad way is what I mean. So like for example, it's so easy to say, well, our senior pastor just isn't good at the offering, or it's easy to like point fingers at the person who did the ask that Sunday and say, well, they must just be really bad at it. So it takes it away from like a personal thing and more of a what are we as an organization, where are we strong and where do we need to grow? Um and so even in that one phone call, it was just such a powerful way to be like, yes, like we are superpowers at this one, but we are a very seeker driven church. So duty based giving actually is like a new concept
Yeah.
to that organization. And so, but a lot of times we take that for granted if we've grown up, like all 3 of us grew up in a church setting where that was what you did, you know?
Yeah.
But if someone's new to church, they have no idea what you're talking about when you say tithe or offering for that matter. So,
The other thing I think it does is I often say that I think the most boring, repetitive part of a Sunday morning gathering is the 2-minute offering talk, because they tend to do the same thing every single time, and they tend to pick one of these that fits their church best. And whatever you do over and over and over becomes too repetitive, and then people
yes.
zone out. And this gives you, okay, how do we talk about giving from a legacy perspective or for a needs-based perspective, whatever. There's churches that are great at worship. We do this as an act of worship, and they talk about that every time, and then people zone out and they don't hear a word you're saying. So it can
Yeah.
help make your offering. I'm very passionate about that offering moment. We have everybody's attention for 2 minutes. Let's use it
Mhm.
well, and this will help help us not be repetitive and boring in a
Mhm.
sense.
So, Tim and David, out of those 6 tiers, big picture wise, are there 1 or 2 areas where you see most churches are strongest in those 6 areas? And then 1 or 2 areas where you most of the time, every church needs to work on more than the others?
Oh yeah, I love David's thoughts on this because he's in this day in and day out. But so my anecdotal response would be, I see very few churches that have any kind of system around legacy giving. Um, so I think that's one that I just don't see a lot. I know there's some organizations out there that focus on that, but I don't see that a lot. Um, I thought of a story while you were talking about duty-based giving, like an illustration. This doesn't exactly answer your question, but I'm going to go down the rabbit trail. Someone who told me like their experience in generosity, and they told me that when they grew up, they were going to Catholic church, and they were pretty consistent. And how they figured out their giving was they would turn in their W-2 to the church, and then they would get a bill. And that was, I mean, that's like the ultimate duty-based giving.
Yes.
Most of us are far from that, but that's
That's
uh,
the perfect illustration of how to make it transactional and not
oh yeah,
transformational.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And then you get
Yes.
to check a box because it's like, yep, I'm done, I'm good. I don't have to pray. I don't have to think about this. Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, Holly, that churches, if you have older people in the church, they're usually very good at duty-based giving. And frankly, it's why churches that we would say, wow, how's that church staying afloat? Because it keeps shrinking and they're not winning anyone to Christ. Well, they're filled with duty-based givers. And I've often said, like, our parents, it's kind of like voting. Our parents grew up in an era where why do our parents vote? Well, because they're Americans, and that's what Americans do. But I bet if you asked, oh, well, your kids aren't old enough to vote yet, Holly, but if you asked Tim's
Yeah.
and my kids about why do you vote, they'd say, well, I'll vote if I'm excited about a candidate. They're
Hmm.
not going to vote every time. And giving is similar. Older generations tend to say, this is what we do. But if you didn't grow up in church or you didn't get discipled into this, the way our culture has moved from, people's first home 40 years ago compared to the size and price of home 40 now, they don't have extra money. So duty-based giving feels so, but I would say the older the church or the more established the church, duty-based giving, they usually do well. And needs-based giving, I think in the more modern church, that's what a younger generation wants. Tell me exactly what this is doing, and then I want to give to it. And I think those are the two most common. And then there's churches that talk about it's worship-based. I don't know how motivational that is, but theologically it's great. And then more and more churches are trying to say, here's our mission. When you give to this mission, here's what it accomplishes. But I think the two that are often most neglected is what Tim said, legacy-based, and then I think most churches that I'm interacting with are not doing a great job of discipleship based giving. How to realize this is about you and your relationship with God. It's not primarily about the church and about money.
Hey, David,
Yeah.
can you
That's
give a
good.
couple tangibles on? You mentioned a few minutes ago the giving moment in services, or the 2 minutes or whatever. And it seems like, I don't have stats on this. It seems like more and more churches, especially contemporary churches, aren't even passing bags or plates.
Right.
So, do you find most of them don't even have a giving moment, spot in the service? So maybe that's one question. And then the second thing is, like, can you just give a couple tangibles, like, of what's one or two things churches could do better in that area?
Yep. Yeah, I think most churches are still having some kind of giving moment if they're contemporary, but it's often awkward because we're not passing anything. So it's like, how do you talk about this? But I'd say most are still doing it.
Okay.
Um, And I would say examples. So, what I encourage a church to do when I work with a church at trying to improve their culture of generosity, we actually create a 52-week schedule of here's what we ought to do. And
Cool.
that if every week you say, when you give, here's what that accomplishes. So, that'd be a mission based giving opportunity. Like when you give, we had 100 high schoolers go to camp, and 10 of them gave their lives to Christ. When you give to our church, you help us accomplish the mission of whatever the mission is, making more and better disciples. That's great. But if you do that kind of talk every week, you'll start like really searching for those stories, and they become routine. So I love, here's how your offering changed a life. That's why I love the best moment for an offering talk is right after a baptism, and being able to share how the mission of the
Yeah.
church helped that person come to faith in Christ. When you give, you help us reach people like Jeremy, who you just saw their life transformed. But I also think then I encourage people 12 times a year share a verse. And there's certain verses that are most common. Uh, you know, God loves a cheerful giver. Um, it's more blessed to give than receive. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. Test me on this. Those are good. But I think there's 100 verses that someone could use that just help people think differently about giving. Like Deuteronomy 14 says, be sure to set aside a tenth of all your fields produce each year. And you could talk about whatever your view of Old Testament, New Testament giving is at that point. But give it. Why did God tell his people to set aside a tenth? And the next verse tells us why. So that you may learn to revere the Lord your God always. Man, the reason you give is not simply so we can pay the bills here. The reason you give is if you want to be wholly devoted to Christ, you cannot do that without surrendering your resources. So I encourage you, follow the pattern of Deuteronomy 14. Set aside a tenth of all that God gives you so that you can learn to revere the Lord your God. So that's a quick 1 minute way to take a verse that people often don't think about and turn it into a new challenge. So I think verses, I encourage people once a month, share a verse in a creative way that they don't always know, and then share a story once a month. And then we fill in the calendar of the other 2 times a month of unique ways, things we could talk about.
That's awesome. Is that part of the audit you guys do?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah, because I'm like,
Yeah,
man,
so we
that is
do we
holy
do
cow.
something that we call right now next level generosity, and that's where we come in and we spend a couple of days learning the culture of the church, learning their practices, learning their what's the actual reality of their church giving, and sometimes it's a little shocking when they realize there's a church, the church that I'm helping in California right now. That I spent an hour with the pastor yesterday. Um, if we took the median income of the area and uh, if everyone in the church made that median household income, then out of about 20, we figured out it's 2,319 households attend their church. I think if I remember right, it's 72 of those 2,300 tithe or above based on the median household income. And so we just help dig into those stats. Where are we? How do we talk about those stats in a non-condemning, non-guilt driven way? And then we spend a year just walking through. We usually make somewhere between 10 to 20 recommendations, and we spend a lot of time on Zoom calls, and I usually visit a handful of times. And I just did a final meeting with a church in a multi-site church, and they wrote on the board that their giving had grown. Uh, I think it was 27% from the year before, through what we were doing. They were just celebrating, figuring out what's next. They're setting a goal to keep those practices going and learn new ones and grow it another 10% next year. So that's kind of the process of what we do and celebrate with churches as we go. It's a lot of fun to watch them grow in these areas.
That's awesome. I love it. And then you also have a series of 9 things you wish churches would stop saying when it comes to generosity. Where can people I think it's like, is it an email that you send out or a blog article somewhere?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
can
So
people
I
find that?
I came up with this
Really help.
list. I'm in a church pretty much 2 times a month. I'm in a church not the one I attend. And I hear these giving moments and I would cringe. And so I just one day sat down and thought, okay, here's what I wish pastors would quit saying. So I started publishing that, and it's gotten some legs on it. And so yeah, people can, the easiest way probably is, I think if you go to my bio on our generosity website. So if you go to generosityos.com and look up my bio, I think at the bottom they put a link to either you can just get the article or you can watch 3 separate videos I did on it. But yeah, I was talking to a pastor yesterday that I'm headed to. We just set up a date for me to start their process. And he said, I just watched your 3 videos. And so we're going to try to fix some of those before you show
Yeah.
up.
You're like, "Okay. Why
But
don't you"
I love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
"Get me out there. It's a safe place. I won't judge you." Yeah.
But yeah, if
That's
anybody
all.
looks that up, or just send me an email you can send me an email at david@generosityos.com or david@leadingsmart.com, and I'll just send you the article. And if you want to, talk about it, if it's helpful, great.
That's awesome. Okay, well, I wanna move into a segment of the show called, um, Who is More with David and Tim. Okay, and I have some questions. I'm putting both of them on the spot, which
Yeah,
both of them hate this, by the way.
you are.
Just as
You also said I'm moving into a segment as though we've done this before. I don't know where you're going at all. But we haven't done this.
we have a fun
Oh,
segment on
okay.
every
All right.
episode,
All right.
Tim.
All
Yeah. Yeah, and
right.
I'm totally putting them, on the spot,
Who is
and
more?
both of them are very organized planner personalities, and so they love it when I do this.
Which
Just
is when
kidding.
When
I
we
asked, hey, can you tell me some questions you're going to ask? And you're like, no. I'm
Nope.
like, great. Thanks, Holly. Appreciate
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna say when we started, we're like, "Hey, let's maybe like talk about this ahead of time." She said, "Just hit record. We're going."
Yeah,
So,
because
all
that's where the good stuff comes out. When
right,
things are too polished, it's like,
we're
it's
leading in real
boring.
times. I get it.
Okay, so who is more thoughtful, Tim or David? What do you
Tim,
guys think?
Tim.
Thoughtful. I have to think about it.
See? I had an answer. Before you finished, I had an answer. Tim needs to think about it. The answer's Tim.
I was trying to understand the question. Thoughtful just about in general, about people, about you just
However, yeah, I think Tim is answering our question by his questions back to our question.
all right. That's fair. Guilty.
David, can you think of a time where you were just like, man, Tim is so thoughtful in your 50 some odd years of knowing him?
A million, a million times. I've sat in meetings with Tim that I have an instant reaction to something that we both experienced, saw, or heard, and Tim just sits there and, he, yeah, he does so well at giving a thoughtful response when I am I'm a little less thoughtful. I'm more reactionary um, in those
Mhm.
moments.
It might be like, I was an executive pastor forever and David was a lead pastor forever. And so, executive pastor is more of a support responsive role. I don't know if it has something to do with just that. I don't know.
So that's
Mhm.
where the lead pastor says something to the staff that their jaws drop, and then the XP goes around to the opposite and says, "Here's what he really meant by
Yeah.
that." That's
We
yeah,
Yes,
we
the
have a
cleanup.
metaphorical shovel that we follow the senior pastor with.
That is so true. Okay, my next question is, who is more competitive, Tim or David?
Ah, interesting. I would say externally David, but internally I'm pretty competitive. I just people don't usually know.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
What
I would say
would you
that's
say,
true.
David?
yeah. I think that's a good answer. We have played pickleball with our spouses twice, and
Yeah.
Sue and I won the first time, and Tim and Faith won the second time, if I remember right. So there's a an equalizing match coming up that's going to happen.
Sure is.
There you go. So maybe I can the next time we do a podcast together, I'll ask, who's better at pickleball? That'll be the next question on the
That's
next podcast.
definitely Tim. That's definitely Tim.
Uh,
Yeah, for a little rabbit trail, but I was on a call with one of our leading smart clients where Tim is doing strategic advising with them and I'm coaching a couple of their leaders. And one of the leaders goes, we called Tim Dr. Durag, right? Because he plays pickleball with their team and he's got his durag on. I loved that so much. Dr.
Thanks for
Durag.
putting out there for the world. That's great. Awesome.
It's
Yeah,
good.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
It's good.
Okay. Who is more creative, Tim or David?
Mm. So I'd make categories for this because I'm thoughtful. I think David is a very creative communicator. So when I've watched
Yeah.
sermons and stuff, he's super creative in that. I can't do that at all. I think I'm creative in like house design, interior stuff. That's where I tend to have my creative juices flowing. Building a deck,
Mhm.
the landscaping, all the stuff.
Yes. Or that when you walk in your house, Tim, that what do you call that? Like it's kind of like a drop zone, like a mini mud room kind of
Yeah.
thing that you did. That is so good. And you did that and designed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about you,
I'm
David? What do
not
you think?
when it comes to working genius, I'm not wonder or invention. So I never feel like I come up with something brand new, but I tend to be able to take a lot of things and organize them quickly. And so it might sound creative, but it's really just my mind organizing a lot of different things and it coming out in an organized fashion. But I don't know if I call that creativity. I call that organization, and I can communicate quickly on my feet typically.
Yeah. No, that's totally creativity for sure. I like it. Okay, last one. Who is funnier, David or Tim?
Wait, the segment was called "Who is More." So is this
Yeah.
who is more funnier?
Yeah. Who is more funnier?
Okay.
Who is more funny?
Oh, I'm giving that to David.
No, I don't think I'm very funny at all. Yeah, no, I don't think that's either of our primary gifts. I think we're enjoyable people to be around, but don't count on either of us to be the life of the party. We need
But
Holly for that.
I'm sure your wife and your kids are laughing at you all the time, David. So you've got to be funny.
100%. 100%. Yes.
Were
Yep.
either of you did either of you do, like, pranks growing up? Like, did either of you participate in, like, pranks in your youth group
I wonder
or
if did we ever TP a house together, David?
Oh, I'm sure we did. I'm
Yeah,
sure we
we
did.
had to have, because that was a big
Yeah.
thing,
Were
back in
you in
the
the car? I got pulled. I was with the Grabers. You remember them, of course. And
yeah.
I was with the Grabers. And hey, were you with us when we got pulled over by a cop and he saw the TP and he said, you guys either all have diarrhea or you're going to put that in the trunk and drive home right now. Yeah, it was not,
I don't
it
remember
was
that.
not okay. That wasn't with you. Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, thank you for humoring me on that. That was fun. I just think it's so special that you guys have this friendship that I mean it's so rare that any of us have friendships for this long, especially men. I feel like that's I don't know about
Mm.
you guys, but that's very rare and really special. So keep it up, you guys. Doing great.
Thanks.
All right, David. Well, you already let us know where we can get in contact with you, David at
Yeah.
generosityos.com and David at leadingsmart.com. Thank you so much for everything you're doing for both Leading Smart and Generosity OS and serving churches. And we're just so grateful for Generosity OS's support and partnership and helping us at Leading Smart being able to serve churches in the way that we do. So thanks for being here and thank you for winging it with us. Everything you said was so helpful and great. So well
Well,
done, sir.
I
Thanks,
love it.
David.
I love serving churches and pastors, and if I can spend the rest of my life doing that, it will be an act of God's grace and great joy for me.
That's awesome.
All right, see y'all next time.